Imagine dying alone in a hotel room, penniless, while the entire world uses your inventions to see in the dark. This is the tragic and shocking story of Nikola Tesla, the man who literally invented the 20th century. Today, you won't just learn about lightning, you'll master the English of genius. Are you ready? Let's flip the switch. Welcome to Story in English. Today we explore the life of a man who was called a madman by some, but a genius by many. His name is Nikola Tesla. Whether you know him as a scientist or a dreamer, his story is a journey of lightning, the trail, and a vision that changed our world forever. Are you ready to see the world through his eyes? Grab your headphones and let's dive into a tale that will electrify your English and keep you hooked until the very last spark. It all began on a dark, stormy night in 1856 in a small village called Smiljan in what is now Croatia. As lightning cracked the sky and thunder shook the earth, Nikola was born. Legend says the midwife was terrified, calling the storm a bad omen. But his mother, Juka, held him tightly and replied, "No, he will be a child of light." Unlike other children, Nikola didn't just play with toys. He saw patterns in the air. He possessed a photographic memory and could visualize complex machines in his mind with such clarity that he didn't even need to draw them. However, his childhood was shadowed by the strict expectations of his father, a priest who wanted Nikola to follow in his footsteps. "You must serve the church," his father demanded. But Nikola's heart belonged to the mysteries of the universe. After surviving a deadly bout of cholera, he finally convinced his father to let him study engineering. His journey into the unknown had begun. In 1884, with only 4 cents in his pocket and a book of poetry, Nikola arrived in New York City. He was an immigrant with nothing but a letter of recommendation to the famous Thomas Edison. Edison hired him, but the two men were like fire and ice. Edison focused on direct current, DC, which was limited and expensive. Tesla, however, envisioned alternating current, AC, a system that could light up entire continents. Edison promised Tesla a massive bonus of $50,000 if he could improve his DC generators. Tesla worked day and night, barely sleeping, and eventually succeeded. But when he asked for his reward, Edison laughed. "Tesla, you don't understand our American humor," he said. Heartbroken and betrayed, Tesla quit immediately. He found himself digging ditches for $2 a day just to buy bread. Why is the path to the future so painful? He wondered, staring at the dirt while holding the secrets of the stars in his head. Tesla's light, however, could not be dimmed for long. He eventually found a partner in George Westinghouse, who believed in his AC vision. This sparked the War of Currents. Edison tried to smear Tesla's name, claiming AC was dangerous. But Tesla was a showman of science. In a stunning display at the 1893 Chicago World's Fair, he allowed high-voltage electricity to pass through his own body to light a bulb, proving AC was safe. He became a superstar. He moved into the Waldorf Astoria and rubbed shoulders with the elite. He built the Wardenclyffe Tower, a massive structure he believed could provide free, wireless energy to everyone on Earth. "Science is for the people, not for profit," he declared. He wasn't a businessman. He was a prophet of a new age. But the world was not ready for such selflessness. When Westinghouse faced financial ruin, Tesla did something unthinkable. He held a contract that would have made him the world's first billionaire. But to save his friend's company and keep the dream of AC alive, Tesla tore the contract into pieces. He gave up his royalties and his future fortune. He chose the progress of humanity over his own bank account. This was the turning point where the billionaire became the mad scientist in the eyes of society. As the years passed, the world moved on, using Tesla's technology to build empires while he faded into the background. He spent his final years in room 3327 of the New Yorker Hotel. He had no wife, no children, and very little money. His only companions were the pigeons he fed in the park. On January 7, 1943, the man who gave us the modern world passed away in silence. Tesla's story is a reminder of the paradox of hope. He taught us that true genius is often lonely, and true sacrifice is often silent. He didn't work for the present, he worked for the future, our present. Finally, Tesla reminds us that every time we flip a switch, we are touching the dream of a man who wasn't afraid to be different. Choose passion over greed and vision over comfort. Thank you for listening to this incredible journey. If Tesla's life sparked something in you today, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Story in English. Let us know in the comments. What is one dream you are willing to sacrifice for? Until next time, keep dreaming and keep learning. It all began on a dark, stormy night in July 1856 in the secluded village of Smiljan, nestled within the rugged mountains of Croatia. The sky was not merely raining, it was screaming. Violent bolts of lightning cracked the heavens open, illuminating the modest house where a mother, Nikola Tesla, was in the throes of labor. The midwife, trembling at the ferocity of the weather, whispered a dark prophecy. This child will be a child of darkness. But Juka, clutching her newborn son amidst the roar of thunder, looked into the infant's eyes and corrected her. No, he will be a child of light. As Nikola grew, it became clear that he was not cast from the same mold as the other children in Smiljan. While his peers played in the rolling hills or tended to the livestock, Nikola lived in a world composed of invisible geometry. He didn't just play, he observed. He saw intricate patterns in the air, shimmering structures that no one else could perceive. He possessed an extraordinary gift known as a photographic memory, but it went deeper than mere recall. He could visualize complex machines in his mind with such vividness that he could test run them mentally, seeing which parts would wear out first before he had even touched a pen or a piece of scrap metal. To young Nikola, the physical world was simply a canvas for the magnificent blueprints already drawn in his imagination. However, this gift came with a heavy burden of expectation. His father, Nikola Tesla, was a highly intellectual and stern Orthodox priest. To Nikola, the path to a meaningful life was paved with scripture and tradition. He saw his son's brilliant mind and envisioned him wearing the robes of the clergy. "You must follow the church, Nikola," he would say, his voice echoing with the authority of generations. The spirit is the only machine you need to understand. Milutin wasn't a cruel man, but he was a man of his time, believing that stability lay in the pulpit, not in the unpredictable world of invention. But Nikola's heart did not beat to the rhythm of hymns. It pulsed with the mystery of the universe. He was obsessed with the why and the how. He spent hours watching the water wheels at the local mill, fascinated by how the invisible force of the stream could be converted into physical motion. He realized early on that nature was a vast, untapped battery of energy. While his father looked up to find God, Nikola looked up to find the mechanics of the stars. "I want to harness the power of nature," he once whispered to the night sky, standing alone in the silent fields. To the villagers, he was a strange, quiet boy. To his father, he was a stubborn son. But to history, he was a revolution waiting to happen. The conflict between father and son reached a breaking point when Nikola reached the age for higher education. Milutin forbade him from studying engineering, insisting on the seminary. The tension was suffocating. It took a tragic brush with death, a severe bout of cholera that left Nikola bedridden for 9 months, to change his fate. On what seemed to be his deathbed, Nikola looked at his father and made a desperate plea. "I might get well if you would let me study engineering." Fearing he would lose his son forever, Milutin finally relented, promising that he would go to the best technical school in the world. That promise was the spark that lit the fuse. Once liberated from the path of the church, Nikola's mind exploded with possibility. He began to study at the Polytechnic Institute in Graz, Austria, where he became obsessed with the limitations of direct current (DC) motors. While his professors insisted that alternating current (AC) was an impossible dream, Nikola had already seen it working perfectly in the laboratory of his mind. He wasn't just a student, he was a pioneer navigating a landscape that others didn't even know existed. This period of his life teaches us a vital lesson in perseverance and vision. Nikola Tesla's journey was not one of easy success. It was a constant battle against the gravity of tradition and the expectations of others. He had to choose between the love of his father and the call of his destiny. By choosing the latter, he sacrificed the comfort of a quiet life for the chaotic brilliance of a world changer. As we look back at that young boy in Croatia, whispering to the lightning, we see the blueprint of the modern world. Every time we flip a switch or connect to a wireless network, we are witnessing the realization of a dream that started on a stormy night in 1856. Nikola Tesla didn't just invent machines, he invented the future, proving that if you can see the patterns in the air, you can eventually change the world beneath your feet. In 1884, the Statue of Liberty was still under construction, but for a tall, slender immigrant from Europe, the true beacon of hope was the bustling skyline of New York City. Nikola Tesla stepped off the boat with nothing but a few personal belongings, a book of poetry, and a letter of recommendation in his pocket. Most importantly, he had exactly 4 cents. Yet, as he walked through the chaotic, mud-streaked streets of Manhattan, he didn't feel poor. He felt like a titan. For his mind was a vault filled with blueprints that could illuminate the entire planet. Tesla's first destination was the laboratory of Thomas Alva Edison, the Wizard of Menlo Park. At that time, Edison was already a global icon, the man who had commercialized the light bulb. However, Edison's empire was built on direct current, DC. DC was like a one-way street. It was functional, but weak. It could only travel a mile before losing strength, requiring noisy power stations on every corner and a chaotic web of thick copper wires that blotted out the sun. When Tesla presented his vision of alternating current, AC, a system that could pulse like a heartbeat and travel hundreds of miles with ease, Edison dismissed him. To Edison, a practical businessman, Tesla was a poet of science, brilliant but dangerous. Despite their differences, Edison hired him to solve the chronic problems plaguing his DC generators. He made a legendary promise. "There is $50,000 in it for you, if you can do it." For 6 grueling months, Tesla worked from 10:30 in the morning until 5 the next morning. He redesigned Edison's machines, making them vastly more efficient. When the work was complete and Tesla asked for his payment, Edison leaned back and laughed. "Tesla, you don't understand our American humor," he sneered. The $50,000, a fortune that would have funded all of Tesla's dreams, was a cruel joke. Humiliated and betrayed, Tesla resigned on the spot. But the world outside was unforgiving. Without a job and with his reputation tarnished by Edison's influence, Tesla fell into the depths of poverty. During the bitter winter of 1886, the man who could visualize the 4th dimension was forced to become a ditch digger. For $2 a day, he performed back-breaking manual labor, shoveling dirt to lay the very cables for Edison's inferior DC system. As he wiped the sweat and grime from his forehead, Tesla looked at his calloused hands and whispered, "Why is the path to the future so painful?" He felt the stinging irony of his situation. He was literally buried in the earth, yet his mind was touching the lightning. This period of manual drudgery would have broken a lesser man, but for Tesla, it was a test of his resolve. He used his lunch breaks to explain his AC theories to the foreman and fellow workers, never losing faith that his current of the future would one day prevail. The war of currents was about to escalate from a personal grudge into a global industrial battle. Edison began a desperate smear campaign against AC power. He funded public demonstrations to prove AC was lethal, even going so far as to electrocute animals to frighten the public. He wanted the world to stay in the dim, expensive glow of DC because it protected his profits. Tesla, however, found an ally in George Westinghouse, a visionary entrepreneur who recognized that Tesla's AC system was the only way to power a modern nation. Tesla wasn't fighting for money. He was fighting for an idea. He believed that energy should be as accessible as the air we breathe. This era of Tesla's life is a masterclass in resilience. It teaches us that being right is rarely enough. You must also be brave enough to endure the ditches of life before you can reach the summits of success. Tesla's struggle in New York proves that brilliance is often met with resistance, and the greatest inventions are born not in comfortable laboratories, but in the heat of betrayal and the cold reality of hunger. As we look at the glowing screens and humming machines of our modern world, we must remember the immigrant who arrived with 4 cents and stayed to give us the light. The war of currents wasn't just about electricity. It was a battle between the greed of the present and the vision of the future. And in the end, as the sun set over the skyscrapers of New York, it was Tesla's alternating pulse that won the night. Nikola Tesla had been betrayed by Edison and forced into the indignity of digging ditches. But his inner light was far from extinguished. In the world of innovation, truth has a way of rising to the surface, and Tesla's truth was the alternating current AC system. He didn't just need a job, he needed a champion. That champion appeared in the form of George Westinghouse, a bold entrepreneur and inventor who saw what Edison refused to acknowledge. Tesla's polyphase system was the key to the industrial future. The partnership between Tesla and Westinghouse became the most formidable force in the history of technology. Together, they prepared to challenge the darkness. The ultimate stage for this showdown was the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago, also known as the Chicago World's Fair. This was a moment of immense historical gravity. General Electric had bid to light the fair using Edison's DC bulbs for $1 million, but Westinghouse underbid them, offering to do it for half the price using Tesla's AC system. On the opening night, President Grover Cleveland pushed a golden button, and in an instant, the world changed forever. Over 100,000 incandescent lamps flickered to life, bathing the white city in a brilliant, heavenly glow. Thousands of spectators gasped in collective awe. For the first time in human history, the night had been conquered. The darkness was no longer a barrier. It was a canvas. Tesla stood at the center of this electric revolution, a tall, elegant figure who seemed to command the very lightning. He became an overnight superstar, a wizard whose magic was grounded in the cold, hard logic of mathematics. Tesla's fame reached a fever pitch. He was no longer just an immigrant. He was a visionary. He successfully harnessed the thundering power of Niagara Falls, creating the first large-scale hydroelectric power plant. This was the realization of his childhood dream in Croatia, to see the water wheels of nature power the world. But as the world began to glow with the light of his AC motors, Tesla's mind was already leaping decades ahead. He wasn't satisfied with wires. He wanted to liberate humanity from the shackles of cables and power lines. Tesla envisioned a world of wireless energy. He believed that the Earth itself was a conductor, and that power could be transmitted through the atmosphere, free for anyone to tap into, anywhere on the planet. To realize this grand vision, he began the construction of the Wardenclyffe Tower on Long Island, a massive 187-foot red brick structure topped with a giant steel dome. This was intended to be the first world wireless system. Tesla's philosophy was radically different from the titans of industry like J.P. Morgan or Thomas Edison. While they sought to build meters and charge for every watt of energy, Tesla dreamed of a world where energy was as free and accessible as the air we breathe. He famously declared, "Science is for the people, not for profit." He envisioned farmers in remote villages and sailors in the middle of the ocean being able to pull energy from the sky to power their lives. However, this was the beginning of his tragic descent. J.P. Morgan, his primary financier, was a man of profit, not a man of prophecy. When he realized that Tesla's goal was to provide free energy that could not be metered or sold, he withdrew his support. "If anyone can draw on the power," Morgan reportedly asked, "where do we put the meter?" Tesla was undeterred, but the lack of funding was a death blow to the project. The Wardenclyffe Tower, which was meant to be the lighthouse of a new civilization, remained unfinished. It stood as a silent, red brick ghost of a future that might have been. Yet, even as his grandest dream crumbled, Tesla's spirit remained defiant. He wasn't a businessman who lost a project. He was a prophet who had seen the light of 1,000 years. He knew that even if he failed, the child of light had already changed the DNA of human civilization. This chapter of Tesla's life serves as a powerful English lesson in integrity and idealism. It teaches us that the greatest successes are often accompanied by the greatest sacrifices. Tesla chose the path of the pioneer over the path of the billionaire. He showed us that while profit can build a company, only vision can build a world. Every time we connect to a wireless network today, we are using a shard of the dream that Tesla tried to build at Wardenclyffe. He may have died poor, but he lived a life that was truly electrified. By the late 1890s, the name Nikola Tesla was synonymous with the future. His alternating current, AC, system had won the war of currents, and the lights of the Chicago World's Fair and the humming turbines of Niagara Falls were living proof of his genius. On paper, Tesla was on his way to becoming the wealthiest human being to ever walk the earth. His contract with George Westinghouse granted him a royalty of $2.50 for every horsepower of AC electricity sold. As the world began to electrify at an exponential rate, those royalties were worth billions in today's currency. However, Tesla was a dreamer, living in a world governed by cold, calculating businessmen. While he was busy peering into the next century, his partner, George Westinghouse, was fighting for his life in the present. The fierce battle with Thomas Edison and the ruthless financial maneuvers of titans like J.P. Morgan had pushed the Westinghouse Electric Company to the brink of bankruptcy. Investors were terrified of the massive royalty debt owed to Tesla. They gave Westinghouse an ultimatum: either you get rid of that contract or we let your company die. George Westinghouse, the man who had stood by Tesla when no one else would, arrived at Tesla's laboratory with a heavy heart. He explained the dire situation. If the contract remained in place, the company would fold, the banks would take over, and Tesla's dream of lighting the world with AC power would likely be buried under legal red tape and corporate greed. What happened next is one of the most unthinkable acts in the history of capitalism. Tesla didn't call a lawyer. He didn't demand a settlement. Instead, he looked at the man who had believed in him. He remembered the ditches he had dug and the hunger he had endured before Westinghouse gave him a chance. Without hesitation, Tesla took his copy of the contract, the document that represented a mountain of gold, and tore it into small, white pieces. "Your difficulties are at an end," Tesla said calmly. "My friendship and the vision of the future mean more than gold. Tear up your copy, and you will not owe me a single penny." In that single dramatic moment, Nikola Tesla walked away from a fortune that would have surpassed the wealth of Bill Gates and Elon Musk combined. He surrendered his riches so that the Westinghouse company could survive, ensuring that his AC motors would continue to be manufactured and distributed to every home and factory on the planet. He gave up his personal kingdom so that humanity could have light. This was the ultimate expression of Tesla's altruism. To him, money was never the goal. It was merely a tool that he often lacked. He believed that the progress of the human race was a sacred duty. While his rivals were building monopolies and hoarding wealth, Tesla was obsessed with efficiency and the liberation of the common man from the drudgery of darkness. However, the world of the 20th century was not kind to such selflessness. Following this sacrifice, Tesla's financial situation began a slow, painful decline. While the world grew brighter, his own pockets grew emptier. The very people who used his patents to build multi-million-dollar industries often forgot to credit the man who made it all possible. He transitioned from being the star of New York to a mad scientist in the eyes of the press, simply because he valued ideas more than invoices. This chapter of Tesla's life serves as a profound English lesson in ethics and integrity. It challenges the modern definition of success. Is a man successful because of what he gathers or because of what he gives? Tesla's story teaches us that the most enduring legacies are not built of stone or gold, but of spirit and service. He lived by a code that the businessmen of his era could never understand. As you flip a switch tonight to read a book or charge your phone, remember the sound of that contract tearing in a dusty laboratory over a century ago. You have light today, not just because of a scientific discovery, but because of a moral decision. Nikola Tesla chose us, the people of the future, over his own comfort. He chose to be poor so that the world could be rich in energy. As the mid-20th century approached, the world was vibrating with the energy that Nikola Tesla had envisioned decades earlier. Radios were humming, factories were buzzing, and city skylines were glowing with the pulse of alternating current. Yet while the world moved at a frantic, electric pace, the man who had set it all in motion was slowing down. Nikola Tesla, once the most celebrated figure in New York's high society, had retreated into a life of solitude and silence. Tesla spent his final decade living in room 3327 of the New Yorker Hotel. He was a man out of time. To the outside world, he had become an eccentric figure, a mad scientist who claimed to be communicating with Mars and working on a death ray to end all wars. But inside that small hotel room, Tesla remained a philosopher of nature. He had no wife to comfort him, no children to carry on his name, and no fortune to sustain his health. His only true friends were the pigeons of New York City. Every day, regardless of the weather, the tall, frail man would walk to the park to feed them. He famously said of one particular white pigeon, "I loved that pigeon as a man loves a woman, and she loved me. As long as I had her, there was a purpose to my life." This period of Tesla's life is a masterclass in the English of reflection. It highlights the bittersweet loss layer of our story DNA. Tesla wasn't bitter about his poverty. He was simply finished with the material world. He had given his patents away, torn up his contracts, and watched others build empires on his ideas. He lived on a modest pension from the Yugoslav government, spending his days in deep contemplation. Even in his 80s, his mind was still a laboratory, visualizing new ways to transmit energy through the Earth's crust. On the night of January 7th, 1943, the child of light finally returned to the source. Tesla passed away in his sleep at the age of 86. When his body was found by a maid, the world momentarily paused to recognize the magnitude of the loss. Over 2,000 people attended his funeral at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine. Leaders of science and government spoke of his genius, but perhaps the most poignant tribute was the world itself. Every light that stayed on that night was a candle burning in his honor. Immediately after his death, the FBI seized his papers and trunks, fearing that his secret inventions might fall into the wrong nya. For years, his name was faded in history books, often overshadowed by the commercial fame of Thomas Edison or Guglielmo Marconi. But history has a way of correcting its mistakes. In the 21st century, Tesla has undergone a resurrection in the public consciousness. He has become a symbol for the underdog genius, the man who cared more for the future of humanity than the profit of the present. Finally, Tesla's story teaches us the most important lesson of all. Every decision we make shapes the future of others. Adolf Hitler, whom we analyzed earlier, chose to use his power to divide and destroy, leaving a legacy of sorrow. Nikola Tesla chose to use his power to connect and illuminate, leaving a legacy of hope. His life reminds us that true success is not found in the gold we hoard, but in the light we leave behind. As you flip a switch, charge your smartphone, or look at the stars and wonder about the universe, remember the man in room 3327. Remember the immigrant who arrived with 4 cents and left with the gratitude of a planet. Choose love over hate, vision over greed, and unity over division. These simple lessons, born from the life of a forgotten genius, can truly make our world a better place. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through history. If Tesla's life has sparked a new light in your English learning journey, please subscribe to Story in English. Let us know in the comments. Do you think the world would be better today if Tesla had finished his free energy tower? Until next time, stay curious, stay bright, and keep learning.